Hello, and welcome to The Poor Generation, the show that inspires the present and future generations to take a deeper look at their lives to see how their gifts and passions can be used to pour back into the world around them. I'm your host, Alex Pasley, and in today's episode, we will talk about living out your faith daily with our guest, SeungJin Park. If you are new to the podcast or tuning back in, I would like to thank you so much for stopping by. If you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us on Instagram, The Poor Generation. I'm so excited about our show today. I met SeungJin at my job around 2 years ago. Our first conversation was based around his guitar because at the time he was leading youth group worship nights, so we were able to connect over music and our faith. He is someone that is constantly smiling and always just has great energy. SeungJin has been tested throughout his life at a very young age, but through those tests, he has learned to use his faith daily to serve others. I would like to welcome you to the Poor Generation. Can you tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself and what you're currently doing?
First of all, I just want to thank you for having me here on the podcast. I think this is a great platform to share inspirations to the listeners, the future generations. So thank you so much. I think this is great. I currently am working as a structural engineer, and a little bit about myself. I was born into a Christian family where my dad is a pastor. My uncle's also a pastor, and my grandpa from my mom's side is also a pastor. As you can imagine, I grew up surrounded by Christian families and teaching and leadership.
So did your parents or family talk about purpose when growing up? If so, how did that affect you?
I think I would say, ever since I was young, listening to my parents teaching and my dad being a pastor, him preaching, I've always known that God is real, and that he redeemed my life, and that we no longer live for ourselves, but for God, and scripture says. And so with my parents' influence and how I grew up, I always knew that our purpose in life is to live for God and to glorify God. And in order to do so, you have to live out your faith daily, not once in a while or whenever you want, but to live out daily, to glorify God in everything that I do. That's based on scripture, 1 Corinthians 10:31. It says, whatever I drink or eat, do it all for the glory of God. And that's something that has stuck with me, and that's been the purpose.
So how did you develop your faith?
For me, I think developing faith in the beginning was my family. Listening to church members and my family's answered prayers and how they interacted with God and how God interacted with them. So that gave me hope for myself. Like, okay, that's what God has done for them. And so like that gave me confidence in knowing that God is real. And so that was a start, right? And so that gave me faith. And then I started praying for myself, and just looking back how God has protected me. And I guess just to add, there were times that I almost died multiple times in my life. When I was young, I was electrocuted back in Korea. And it's a 220 volts in Korea, but instead of me contracting, I got knocked back from the electricity. And I believe that was God saving me in that moment. And also, a couple years back, I got into a huge car accident, huge car accident, where people around the neighborhood thought I died. So things like that, I just know God has just been protecting me, helping me, and like looking back at my life, knowing where God has led me and where God has helped me with, builds my faith.
Well, I am so glad you are still here and able to share what all God has done for you. I think it is important to take time to reflect on where you have come from. God has definitely showed you at a young age that you do have a purpose on this earth.
Right. It's like God has saved me multiple times from death. So there's got to be a reason that I'm alive, and there's got to be a purpose that God has stored for me. But no matter what that is, the goal is, what am I doing now for God, right? And staying faithful and to live out my faith daily.
So, what is your definition of purpose?
This definition of purpose in life, for me at least, is to glorify God. So, in a way, the correlation is, in order for me to glorify God, I have to live out my faith daily. Because I started thinking about my purposes since like late high school, and I wanted to live for God and was asking God to show me what I can do to glorify Him and work for His kingdom, right? And so my faith comes into where I'm trying to live out my faith daily by listening to Him, right? And by whatever I'm doing right now, to do it for God's glory and His through faith. So like, it's like believing whatever I'm doing right now is something God has called me to do.
So, how do you live out your purpose daily then?
One thing first is like, I lead youth group still, and so that's where I have to be. Obviously, I have to lead middle school boys, so conscious of what I do, because I don't want to be a hypocrite, obviously, to uh, people that I talk to and the middle school boys that I talk to. So I try to be an example. So that definitely helps me. And then also every morning I pray and ask God to show me and reveal to me what I can do for Him that day. Granted, some days you may not get anything. Some day you may just pass by, and then at the end of the day, you look back and, there'll be days where you're like, well, I don't think I've ever really done anything for God today. But that shouldn't discourage you, but to only challenge you that, you better be, that I want to be better next day, or stay alerted next day, and just seek out those little things, even encountering with people. Just, it doesn't have to be anything grand when I say, live out for God and living off faith, but it's those small detailed things that you sometimes think about, and it could be simple as just talking to somebody, reaching out to somebody that you passed by today or something like that.
So, how do you develop your faith to become stronger?
I think surrounding yourself with Christian people who you can talk to, and also for me, being a youth group leader also helps. The other way is like, I'm still young, there's more future in me, and I also just got engaged. With that being said, I want to be the future husband, and be the future father that God has called me to be. And so I've been praying to God to help me become better in faith. So I think it takes choice of spending time with the Lord daily, and just seeing God work in that, even through the small process. Like I've said, like even small things that God has provided, is where it builds faith for me.
Yeah, I think we should appreciate the small things that God does in our life. So, what advice would you give someone that is looking for their purpose?
Yeah, so I think the first thing I tell them is, and be careful when you hear me say this, but at the same time, I think this is what I believe in, is that I don't think God needs us to do anything, right? Like, He doesn't need me to be an engineer. He doesn't need someone else to be a doctor or anything like that. What He desires from us is, no matter what we do, can we glorify God in that, So in a way, it's like, it could be a teacher, you could be a doctor, you could be sports player, football player, whatever it may be. No matter what you do, no matter where you are, I think the main question is, what are you going to do to glorify God in that field?
So, why and how did you stay so faithful with God during your life challenges? You could have easily checked out or given up on Him. What kept you so faithful?
Because to me, He has been faithful to me so far. Like I said, I think those times where I doubt, I think back of the times He saved my life. I think back of times that He provided that I think that I needed. So it just goes back to my personal experience of God encounterment, if that makes sense. Because I mean, there are days where I think people can doubt, like, is God even real? And I'd say that there was definitely times that I even questioned that too myself. However, I can't deny what has happened in my life, right? Like, what has happened in my life in the past, I can't deny that it didn't happen. So knowing that, I know God has helped me. I know God was there before me. I know God provided me financial helps, emotional help, whatever it may be. And again, God helped me. He saved my life multiple times. So in a way, it's like I can't deny those facts. I can't deny those past. So whenever I do question God, whenever I do am frustrated with God, and maybe my faith is being tested, I just think back on those times and know like, okay, no, God was there for me. God is there. I know He's good. So it's just those my personal experiences in my life in the past, knowing that is what helps me stay faithful.
Gotcha.
Not easy. It's not easy. However, I can't deny my past. You can't just forget about that. So
Yeah.
I think one thing I would definitely recommend for those listeners is take time and look back in your life and see where God has intervened. And if you believe there are times that He has did that, write that down. Write that down. And so when you're struggling with faith, when you're struggling and doubting, that'd be a great resource for you to go back and kind of read over them again and pray over them again, and just be reminded that God has been there for you in all those times. So why would He leave you now? Like, why would He not do that now?
Yes, I think it is important to journal. Before I go to bed, I write down two things that brought me joy that day and two things that I'm grateful for. So if I'm ever having a bad day, I can go back and look at all the things that brought me joy and see the things that I'm grateful for. So when are some times you had to use your faith when it comes to purpose?
Right. So again, my faith would be the fact that when I look, so again, college tuition is pretty expensive, and even going on a mission trip too. I know financial stuff was a big issue for me. We didn't have much financial wealth. Um, so with that being said, even when I went to, I'll give you an example for my mission trip. Even when I went to mission trip in college, I knew I was really broke, and this mission trip was like costing 2750. I remember to go, and I remember just thinking, like, there's no way I can pay that much. There's no way. And I doubted myself, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. But the moment that I realized this is what I want to do, and I don't know, I wasn't sure if I could afford it or anything like that. But I remember one time I just decided to go. Again, I didn't know if this is what God wanted me to do or not, but I know I had a desire to go to mission trip. And even though I couldn't afford it, I was like, I'll take a step of faith and happens, right? We'll see what happens. And I said, I'll go. And I made that decision pretty late. And so I obviously started fundraising pretty late. And I remember I only had a couple months left to raise 2750, and I had about like $100 in my bank account. Every Sunday for that whole month or so, I wasn't offering my money to God. And I even asked God, or told God, I was like, hey, God, do you know I know this, I need this money. Like, I can't give to you right now. I need it for my mission trip. Uh, like vaccines are costing me $100 and stuff like that. So I need this for mission trip. So like, I need this. I can't give this to you. And then something hit me because it was still convicting me that I wasn't giving my offering to God. And something hit me. And then I realized God is the one who provides, right? And so far in college, like I said, He provided me with job. He provided me with ability to work, and He provided me a way to pay for my tuitions. And so, looking back, God has been faithful to me so far. He has been answering my prayers. So why am I holding back now? He's the one who provides. He's the one who gives. It's like, what am I going to do with this $100? Nothing. I can't do anything. So next Sunday, I took all my money out and I offered it to God, and I prayed, and I told God, this is all yours. There's nothing I can do. This is all yours. You take it and you do whatever you want to do with it. And there were some of my friends who I talked to, and I told them about this, They even told me like you were being stupid. Like why did you give that money away? You know you needed to pay for your vaccines that's coming up. Um, like you needed that money, and they were just telling me like I made a bad decision. And I was like, I know, but that's what I feel like God wanted me to do, and I gave it to God. And next thing I know, within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I've been getting money from churches, from my friends, and stuff like that is where I know um, God has helped me because I took the step of faith. I had $0 in my bank account, and God fulfilled my fundraiser for my mission trip. Even with, like I said, even with tuitions, that's the same case, right? I asked for God's to help me with my financial helps, and He provided me my internship, and then I was able to pay it off, and I got out of college basically with no debt. Um, Things like that, and it was my faith that I prayed for, but at the same time I took actions, right? So I don't want people to listen to my story and think like, oh, I can pray about money and God will give me the money then. Like I don't think that. No, I'm not saying that. I had to take a step of faith, and then God answered. I took a step of faith of giving my all money to God and trusting God in that, and He provided me with fundraising for mission trip. So it's not that God just gave me money out of nowhere. I put prayers, faith, and action, and then God answered me.
Man, I think it is so great to see how God has worked in your life. The world needs to hear more testimonies like yours. So, listeners, it is important to pray and to use your faith daily and to take actions. Before we wrap up, I have two questions that I always ask my guests. Question one: who or what is pouring into you right now?
I would say my parents, as always. They're still the first people that I go to whenever I have any issues, even with faith, even questions about faith, or even questions about the decisions, or even confirming, what I'm thinking about doing and whatnot. Because I just know that they're um, spiritual leader in my life. So they definitely their words of wisdom are definitely pouring into my life, even still. And then I would say my fiance, I just got engaged a couple weeks ago. She's also a woman of faith. She definitely challenges me. Like even the other day, she even asked me like, "Are you spreading the gospel?" Like, and that convicted me for sure. I was like, "Whoa!" Like, I don't know if I had been intentional about spreading the gospel, but that
Uh-huh.
was a great reminder from her to know that I need to be more active in spreading the gospel, you know?
Yeah, I think it's so important to have positive people in our lives, and it's also important to have people that will challenge us. So let's hop to question two. What are you doing right now to pour into this world?
Yeah, I think that obviously there's a couple of things, and I already said them before, but right now I'm still leading middle school boys at Sunday night life group services, and where I teach Bible studies. So that's where I definitely pour into the world. I try to be an example for them. I try to um, help them out in their life. And then I am leading my second mission trip this upcoming May to Honduras, where we're going to be building a bridge for this community where they need access to hospitals and school all year round, because during the rainy seasons, it gets so flooded that people can't go across the communities. So some people loses access to hospitals. A lot of kids loses access to school for those time frames. But we'll be going there to build a bridge so that they can actually access them all year long, no matter what the weather is, no matter what if there's a rainy season or not. So I would say those are the two big things that I'm doing right now to pour into the world, is my mission trip and my middle school boys at the youth group.
Wow, that is awesome, SeungJin. I'm so glad to see that you're using your gifts to pour back into this world. Listeners, I have a couple key takeaways I want to leave you with. Takeaway one: take a step of faith this week and try using one of your gifts to help someone in this world. It doesn't have to be large, it can be something small. Next takeaway, you may not look at your career as something that is life changing, but God still wants to use you exactly where you are. Remember, God doesn't need us to be a doctor or an engineer. He wants us to glorify Him in what we are doing. The next takeaway is take time to look back at situations in your life when God has helped you or protected you, because this is a great way to build your faith and to remember where you have come from. Also, remember with the holidays coming up, this is a great opportunity to help your local nonprofits or to help a family out during the holidays with providing them with either gifts or turkeys. I know this is something that brings me a lot of joy. If you are still listening, I want to give you a huge thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into episode 6. Please follow us on Instagram, The Poor Generation. Like, share, and comment. You can also email me. My email address is thepoorgeneration@gmail.com. I would love to hear about your life stories, and if you have any questions or book recommendations, please reach out to me. Also, each week's book recommendations are going to be saved on our Instagram page. You can find it under book highlights. Listeners, thank you so much for your support. We are building up a community that is pouring out love and pouring their gifts back into this world. I want to end the show by saying that you are loved and that you do have a purpose. You do have unique gifts and talents to offer this world. I love you, and I will see you in the next episode. That is a wrap on episode 6. Thank you so much.